What we kept off camera. By the time the apartment learned our footsteps, I could tell Ari's keys apart from mine in the dark. Mine were tired, quiet, work-shaped. His rattled like a tease. We kept them in a bowl by the door that had belonged to somebody's grandmother and liked the weight of anything that didn't break. I was the one who cooked. Ari said he liked to keep his hands for the lens. He was a filmmaker without a film, a collector of almosts. I worked in post, sound editing, making strangers' breaths admit what they meant. We met on a gig, rented a life in a building where the elevator knew our jokes and learned each other's silences like languages. His, a script still being written. Mine, a tape running under everything that said, "Don't touch the fader." There was a time when we made a project out of not being trivial. No couple shots, I said early on. No audience. He laughed. He said I was the only person he knew who could make the word private sound expensive. We were good then, hungry, ordinary, forgiving each other's ambitions because they looked alike. The first hairline crack was small and harmless on paper. Ari's friend Theo curated a series, rooftop screenings in July, short films, and a bar with a view that pretended we lived in a city that loved itself. Ari shot a piece for it, 15 minutes of late light and strangers' necks, a love letter to the way windows flirt after 8. He came home with the late wind still in his hair and said, "You should have seen the girl at the bar. No, woman. She watched the whole thing and didn't look at her phone once." I said I was happy his film had eyes. I meant it. I meant it the first time. Her name was Lena. It took 2 weeks for the name to show up all casual, like it had walked here on its own. She designed book covers, which sounded like a job that admired foreplay. She lived near the river and liked old supermarkets with fluorescent lights that made everyone look honest. Ari talked about the covers she made like they were parties other people deserved. I could hear the muscles in his shoulders change shape when he said her name. Some part of me filed it under minor, under later, under don't be theatrical about air. I found out what her laugh sounded like, because he brought it home on his shirt. "This is nothing," he said into my neck. This was later. This was after a screening where the city had pretended to be smaller and then remembered how to be mean. "She's just good at talking like it means something." I said we were all good at that, some of us even got paid. He kissed my mouth like it was work. We kept making love as if bodies knew how to ignore plot. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they're better than the people carrying them. I met Lena 2 weeks later because the city is rude that way. We were at the corner bar where the floor liked to laugh when heels lied to it. Theo introduced her like a magic trick where he reveals the card you already suspected. She smiled at me straight on, a favor. "Your sound makes people confess," she said, "and I make covers for their confessions." She held out her hand. It was warm. What do you do when you like the person you're supposed to refuse? You pour gin over ice and call the night a witness. You listen to Ari talk about a shot he missed because he looked at the wrong face, and you notice the way Lena's mouth listens. You think, this is a problem, and your second thought is, I am not a problem person. Your third thought knows better. Were there rules? The kind no one writes down because they don't survive paper. Don't flirt in front of the person your body calls home. Don't tell stories that include yourself in past tense while someone's still sitting there. Don't make a triangle in a room with bad acoustics. We broke none of these, and we broke all of them. One night after the screening of a film that made kissing look like punctuation, Ari said he had to stay and help coil cables because the city owed the roof respect. He came home with wind that didn't belong to us. He undressed like an apology to upholstery. In bed, he reached for me the way you reach for water you haven't earned. I let him. That's a confession and not an indictment. Bodies think they're Switzerland until you tell them about history. I asked him the next morning softly, because soft things get answers. Is this an us problem or a you problem? He said he didn't know. He said he wasn't sure if wanting to be admired counted as a weakness or a stove. He said nothing about love. I made eggs like I believed in breakfast. The thing about Lena was that she didn't push. She was the kind of temptation that knows its job is to stand still. I started seeing her everywhere, at Theo's screenings, in lines for basement shows, at the bookstore that still carried small magazines with manifestos. We learned how to stand near each other without confessing. We became a sentence that never picked a tense. One night she said, "You look like the person in a picture who knows he's being photographed." I said, "You design the borders for a living, forgive me for believing in them." She put her fingertips on the rim of her glass like she could make water forget what it wanted. "Forgive you," she said, a little smile that didn't require teeth. "We're still thanking each other for being decent. It's too soon for forgiveness." Ari and I had a fight that didn't deserve the word. We were good at that, arranging furniture with our voices. He said I had a talent for sounding dignified when I was afraid. I said he had a talent for sounding brave when he wanted permission. He slept on the couch because the bed belonged to sentences we hadn't earned. In the morning, we made coffee like a truce makes a country. A week later, Lena asked me to help her carry a couch up 3 flights in a building that didn't like helping. She did it like a person who knows a favor is a kind of intimacy but doesn't want to wear the dress. The couch was ugly. It was also heavy. We laughed as if the stairs were listening. At the top she gave me water and a look that would have been a mistake if I was younger. I am not younger. There is a version of this story where we kissed. In that version, the kiss is a door and also a trap. In this version, we did not. In this version, she touched my shoulder like I was a wall the painting deserved. "What happens to people like us," she asked, as if the pronoun were a math problem, "when attention becomes a drug?" I said the first sentence that came to my mouth. "We try not to sell the dealer our furniture," she laughed. We stood very still. The room kept its temperature. The building forgave us for being tired. Ari kept being both better and worse than I was prepared to allow. He came home with small kindnesses he didn't brag about. Extra cash from Theo for Lena's cover. A plant for the windowsill he overwatered and then rescued. A shirt I had wanted but hadn't tried on because the tag looked louder than me. He also stayed out when he knew the bowl didn't like the sound of keys alone. He also told me a story about a hand that touched his wrist at a bar, and how he didn't move it right away. "Are we cheating?" I asked, softly again, because I wanted the word to be the flattest thing in the room. "If we tell each other what almost happened." He said that depended on whether almost needs a lawyer. He said he wanted to be the kind of man who didn't do an inventory of almosts to feel brave. He said he still wanted me. Some part of me believed him because some part of me wanted to. Here is the scene other people want in stories like this. A door, a bed, a lie. Here is the scene we actually lived. 3 people in a room where everyone knows better than to touch and someone touches anyway, and the touch sits on the table between them like a glass that spills but refuses to fall. The night it should have broken, it didn't. We went home separately. We stayed unheroic. It would be easier to tell you that I left. It would be respectable, small, and sharp like a summary. I did not leave. I did something harder. I told Ari and then I told Lena that we were allowed to want and not allowed to ruin. Marriage is a word that behaves badly outside its tribe, but commitment is a currency anyone can learn. I said, "If you love me, don't make me interesting." He said, "If you love me, don't make me safe." I said, "If I love you, I will keep saying no to the version of you that thinks a camera is a pardon." The night everything came to a head, the city was in a mood. Rain made all the windows practice honesty. The screening was crowded and smelled like a lottery of cologne. Ari's film looked beautiful enough to cause trouble. Lena stood at the back, hands in her coat pockets like patience. Halfway through, some man we didn't know put his hand on my shoulder as if my body were an instruction. "For the shot," he said, the four words that think they own whatever they see. I moved 1 centimeter. His hand met air. Ari saw me not being touched. Lena watched Ari watching me. Afterward, we were all three at the corner where taxis forget which way is legal. Ari looked at me like air wants to apologize. "I'm done being brave," he said. "I want to be good." Lena closed her eyes like a curtain. "I don't want to be a story," she said. "I don't want to be the woman who gets thanked in acknowledgments and deleted from the dedications." I said nothing helpful. The rain did what rain does when it thinks it has time. Ari stopped calling Lena at hours that made elevators tired. He started bringing home small oranges that he peeled and left for me like a thesis. He made a film that was about a city and looked like a city, and featured no faces you could follow to a bed. Lena made a cover so spare it felt like a palm. She met someone else who wasn't me, a person whose keys didn't sound like teasing. We remained a sentence that had finally chosen a tense. Here is a thing that surprised me. We got better. Not in the way fairy tales sell, you know. In the way people who stop needing to be plot twists learn the pleasure of being reliable. Ari came home when the bowl needed keys. He asked permission without making it sound like a game. I said yes more often because I trusted my own no. Some nights we still fought like furniture. Some mornings we still made eggs like the house asked for forgiveness. Bodies kept being a kind of language. We could read even when the plot was uncooperative. Months later, Ari screened a new short in a space with bad chairs and good light. It was about a bridge that had never once been dramatic and how the city loved it by forgetting it most days. I did the sound. Lena came with her new person who laughed at the right times. The audience clapped a clap that felt earned. After, a man with a camera reached toward my jaw for the shot. I moved 1 centimeter. "Don't," I said, softly because soft traveled farther. "We're keeping some things off camera." Ari watched the hand not touch me. He put his own hands in his pockets, and for once the gesture didn't look like a man pretending he was harmless. "Home?" he asked. The word felt more like an address than a question. "We walked there the way you walk when the city isn't trying to sell you back yourself." He took off his scarf on the elevator and looked at me like a recipe that finally made sense. "We were almost not fine," he said. "We were," I said. "Almost is where people live until they learn how to talk." He kissed me in the kitchen where the bowl liked the sound of keys. We were not a miracle. We were maintenance. And that's what we kept off camera, not the sex. Though there is a version of this where I'd tell you exactly how he made my back relearn its name. But the way we kept the weather from voting us into being strangers. People watch and want confession to mean a door. We kept a door, sure. We also kept walls that didn't apologize for being walls. We wrote our names on the index card again, the way you write them on the first day of school, big and legible and not for the camera. Sometimes I still think about Lena in the stairwell with the ugly couch, and the way the two of us decided not to be interesting. Sometimes I think about Ari's hand in his own pocket like a promise and not a punishment. Sometimes I think about the 1 centimeter, the distance between being a story and being a person, and how I plan to keep choosing it even when a camera thinks it deserves more. The bowl by the door still likes the weight of anything that doesn't break. Keys still sound like the days they've had. Mine are quieter now. His still rattle, but not like a tease, more like a song you interpret for the life you can afford. And when someone asks if our story has a twist, I say yes, we didn't. We stayed. We kept the good parts and stopped pretending the messy parts wanted an audience. The camera went home hungry and we didn't.